Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Amy Kemp. I'm so excited to have you here with us today, Amy. How are you?
I'm so great. Thank you for the invitation and for having me.
Yes. And I am, as I said, thrilled to have you. I'm excited to have this conversation today. Amy, you are the CEO, owner of Amy Kemp Incorporated, and you are the author of I See You. And this is a guide for women to have more work. Wait, let me strike that. I'll start over. I See You, a guide for women to make more, have more, and be more without more work. And so I love this concept, and we're going to dive into this and talk about it more. But I always love to have my guests start with their journey. What kind of led you down this path? How did you get into this, writing the book? And really, where did the title come from? Because I think it's brilliant and I want to hear more.
Of course. Well, my professional arc of experiences, I would say, started as a high school English teacher. I thought that originally wanted to be a professor at college. And so I graduated with a teaching degree, but went right on to get my master's degree in English literature and thought I would do my PhD, but kind of got into those upper level classes and realized that maybe a life studying Marxist literary theory wasn't quite what I was cut out for. And so taught for 5 years, and while teaching, I started a small business that grew and grew and transitioned from full-time teaching to full-time entrepreneurship and really grew a business in sales for over 20 years. So I've been an entrepreneur, self-employed for that amount of time, grew a very large organization and a huge team of people throughout those 20 years. This business, Amy Kemp Inc., was a surprise to even me. I was not thinking I was going to start another business. The other business is doing really well and had kind of reached the top of the mountain, so to speak, in that world when I started to have the same conversation with different people and hear the same message on podcasts that I was listening to and books that I was reading. And have you ever had that happen where people start saying the same thing to you over and over? And you think, no, oh no. So that message was this: I'm having the same conversation with women who need me to pull them together. The women I was talking to were isolated, accomplished, ambitious. They were at a place in their career where they'd done some things, they had really accomplished some things, but suddenly found themselves without peers, especially women, and really experiencing just a lot of exhaustion and isolation. And I thought, oh, if I could pull these women together, there would be a magical thing that might happen. I did not think I was starting a business, which is usually how you start the best businesses, by the way. And so I got certified to use a tool called the Habit Finder. It's an assessment tool that measures your subconscious habits of thinking. I had been a client who had used this tool and it had transformed my business, grew it ×4 over a period of 3 years. And so I knew that was going to be the tool I wanted to use. So I got certified to use that tool, thought I'll just gather a couple of groups of these women together and see what happens. And what happened was magical. It was everything I've always loved, which is the development of people and leaders, particularly women, and this community that started to grow and grow and grow. And so that was 7 years ago. Now this is my full-time work. I use this assessment tool in the curriculum in small groups of women and then one-on-one with clients as well. And of course, the book. It's so fun to have you say author of. It's a new title. It's a new addition to my accolades, I would say. It's been really great. And can I tell you the story of the title too?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
I feel like that's a really important story. And it sort of meshes with the purpose of the business. So I had been at a community event, and very briefly, a friend of mine introduced me to another woman who I liked instantly. just felt like we would really connect. And so I reached out to her and just said, I'd love to have coffee. And we ended up meeting over a cup of coffee. So she shared her story for about an hour, just told me all of her professional journey. And this is someone who sits at important tables in our community. She has a huge job. She oversees tons of people and has a really busy family life. So I listened to her whole story, and about 55 minutes in, she interrupts me and very brusquely says, "Why did you invite me to coffee?" And I didn't even, it took me a split second. I just said, "Because I see you." And she just put her head down and wept. And for a long time, it felt like for me. But I just let her, she needed to. And she sat up and wiped her eyes and she sort of composed herself and she said, "Thank you. So few people do." And so I knew that's who I wrote this book for. That person who everyone sees, but no one really sees. That was the inspiration for not only the book, but also, or not only the title, but also the book.
Yes. And for the work that you're doing, it sounds like assisting women in finding how they can, well, like the title even says, it's you don't have to do all this work, but you can have these things. You can make more, you can have more, you can be more, but you don't have to work more. And so I love this. And so let's dive into kind of the core messages. And it's, you talked about thoughts, and it's, you can't outwork your thoughts. And so I want to know, what does that mean exactly? And how does that affect us? Because I think that we do try to just keep working and maybe not getting where we want to go. So let's dive into that.
I'm sure you've talked to people who have this experience where they are hard workers. They are checking things off of their list every day. These are not people, the people I wrote the book for are not people who don't have a work ethic or haven't already built something through a little bit of elbow grease and hustle and just a little bit of getting your hands in the dirt and digging, kind of an idea. However, at a certain point in every woman that I work with in their career or in their professional journey or even personally, you reach a point where you're maxed out. There are no more hours or there's no more energy. There's no, you cannot just keep working harder. And at the same time, you want more. You want to make more. You want more income. You want more influence. You want more impact. But it's impossible for you to work more. So that is the place where I meet a lot of my clients, is that kind of cross section of those two things. And what it takes to go to the next level a lot of times is understanding the subconscious habits of thinking that are happening when we're not even aware, and then replacing those that aren't serving us with better or healthier habits of thinking. In addition, there's a lot of excavation of why we're working so hard. What's driving that? What's motivating that hard work? And typically, I describe it a little bit like riding a bike, where you can only pedal so fast in order to go to the new place where you're traveling further with less effort, even maybe, is by shifting gears. So the work I do is about shifting to that different gear so you can travel further, but with fewer revolutions of the pedals, less hustle, more understanding of your value, more presence, more development of people, more of that. And what do you have to believe about yourself to step into that new way of being?
I love that idea, that concept that you just shared about when you're pedaling a bicycle and how it can be very difficult, like especially when you're going uphill, right? But until you shift gears, that makes all the difference in how the effort that you have to apply to get where you need to go. And so that's a brilliant analogy. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think that allows us to really kind of stop for a moment and think about what we're doing and how can we shift that thought, that effort, and make those changes to get us further. So that's great stuff, Amy.
And what comes up when you're faced with those choices? I'm fresh off of a meeting coming into this podcast with someone who potentially could be then taking the business to the next level. And we had this conversation about what she does and how she could really support this business that I'm growing. I feel so uncomfortable. I feel so, and it's not with the work. I'm very comfortable with work. I'm not afraid of that. I think what I'm afraid of, if I could, it's again fresh in my mind, is, ooh, that puts me in a new level of spotlight, a new level of earning, a new level of expectation, a new level of, and what would I have to believe about myself to believe I'm worthy of that, that I deserve that, that I'm ready for that, that won't interrupt my quality of life that I've worked so hard to create or protect, maybe. And so what level of trust do I have to have in my own boundaries to be able to move into this new level of influence and right? But there's so much to learn in those spaces of right when you're ready for growth and paying attention to what comes up that needs to be healed or addressed or acknowledged. That's like the real good stuff. That's what the point is, I think, the point of all of it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think you're right that that stretching of ourselves, it exposes things. And if we really take time to look at what is exposed when we're in that stretching point to reach a new level or try a new thing, I think that can make the world of difference in whether you actually go for it or you don't.
You would retreat running without question if you're not doing the internal work that matches the external work. I've seen this happen so many times with women that I've worked with throughout the years where they would leave a traditional job earning X amount of dollars, move into an entrepreneurial space and figure out how to create a business that generates the exact same level of income that they earned in the job they left, whether they were working as an administrative assistant or an executive at a Fortune 500 company. They would find that water level that matched their feeling of worthiness, and they would subconsciously create a business that would provide that level of income. And so it has nothing to do with the business. It has everything to do with these habits of thinking that are so happening at such a level we're not even aware of them. And so there's a real slowness to the growth of growing yourself, the business growing yourself, the business growing. And if one outpasses the other, you will self-sabotage and return back down. You can sustain it maybe for 6 months or a year, but I have seen women create relational drama. I have seen them literally get sick, physically sick, and sabotage themselves. I have seen them create excuses that aren't real because it's that uncomfortable. So that internal growth can't outpace the external growth or you'll return back down. I'm sure you've seen that happen too.
Oh, 100%. And I know even for myself, this idea of you have a goal that you want to reach, and maybe you reach it and you can sustain it for a brief period of time, but then you do just kind of fall back into whatever thoughts and beliefs and habits that you had before, and you're back to square one. And it's not just in the career, it could be health, it could be fitness.
Oh yeah, that's so
Yeah.
true. It's not just money or
Yeah.
career. It can be in any area. I agree.
Yeah. And that's where
Absolutely.
it really is 100% your thoughts.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know. It's
And you
also really slow, the change that lasts.
Yeah.
And I think that's really annoying to people. But I will say to clients all the time, if what you're looking for, actually to potential clients, if what you're looking for is a quick shift or 5 quick steps that are easy, I am not your girl. This is not this work, because I've been doing this work. The first time I started doing this work was 15 years ago. I'm still in the process of doing this work. And I've actually come to land on the understanding that this work is the point. It's actually the point. It's not even the thing I'm creating, because that thing changes and it grows and it does what it will do. But the real gift of it is this journey that is teaching me so much along the way.
Yes, absolutely. The journey. And
Mhm.
Jim Rohn has a great quote. It's one of my favorites. And it's not who you are like when you reach the goal, it's who you're becoming as you're working toward the goal. That's really the most
The
important
best
point
part.
of it.
Have you ever seen, there's a documentary on Netflix called The Dawn Wall?
Mm.
So, do you remember the crazy show Free Solo, where the guy scaled the mountain without any whatever? He was crazy. Well, in that show, there are a few other characters, other climbers, rock climbers, that are sort of side characters to the story. And the Dawn Wall is about one of those guys who wants to scale this part of El Capitan at Yosemite that's never been scaled. So it's the whole journey, and it's a long journey of him figuring out how they're going to scale this slab of rock. But at the end, if you watch through the whole thing, which, by the way, it is a really great show to even watch with your family of all ages, which is really rare. It's just a really compelling story. But at the end, he gets to the top and he says, "Oh, what was really great was the middle. It was the struggle of figuring it out and trying to rely on other people and bringing on a team and overcoming obstacles and trying and failing." And he has this reflection at the end. It's almost a melancholy that it's over, because he really relished the journey more than the summit, which is cool. It's a great show.
Well, thank you for that recommendation. I'm going to check that out for sure. My daughter is hugely into rock climbing, so I'm
Oh,
surprised
she
I haven't.
is?
Yes.
Oh, then you would
Um,
really love it.
yeah, for sure. And I
Are
tried it myself
wild.
recently. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing. Just baby, easy, super easy
Yes.
indoor rock climbing, but it really is very zen and you're just
Yes.
like in the now. It's incredible. But I don't want to get too
Mhm.
far off topic. It is all kind of
It
relevant.
is.
Everything is what we're talking about, but I like what you talk about in the book. There's a couple of things I really want to touch on. And it's a lot of what you do, it seems easy to you, feels easy to you, but astonishes other people. And so I want to talk about this concept. And so share a little bit more about that.
Yes. So our natural genius is the thing or things that we do without even thinking about it. It
Mhm.
just feels so easy. It almost feels ridiculous when someone says, "Whoa, how did you do that?" Or I don't, or they seem to struggle to do the thing that just to you feels so dumb. I'm going to give you an example of this. We have a family friend, actually, the woman who introduced me to my husband. She is responsible for, I think, 10 marriages that have lasted over 20 years of connecting people. But she has two gifts that are really unique. One is cooking large quantities of food for huge numbers of people. And then two, creating safe spaces for high school-ish aged people. So the last 2 years, she is in her early 70s. She's my parents' age, and she has a grandson who's one of my son's best friends. Every day they have off-campus lunch. They go to Mimi's house, and there's 15 boys. She cooks massive quantities of food. But more than that, they sit at her counter and they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk. Now, the investment she has made in my son is so valuable. And I, one, am never cooking large quantities of anything. I will order it or cater it. I have no interest, nor would I be good at it. Nor do I want 15 smelly high school boys at my house every day. I love those boys, but I do not want them coming here every day. And I don't want to cook food for them every day. She loves it and doesn't even know she's doing it. It's not like she set out with a grand plan. It's her natural genius. And it's those things, even that we just are doing without really thinking about it. Here's the lesson for so many of us, especially women. you can take those areas of natural genius and you can monetize them and get paid a lot of money to do the thing that feels so easy to you but astonishes everyone else. And I think we miss it. We miss what those things are because of the ease with which we do them. So we oftentimes just think, well, that's not worth anything because it's so easy.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking the thing that's so easy for me is actually the most valuable thing that I do. It's my most valuable offering to the world. And so that is something I do a ton with clients, is helping them identify those areas of natural genius, and then also to figure out, how can I get paid not just a little, but how can I get paid handsomely for those skills and gifts that I have that are unique.
Yeah,
So
that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Amy. It's the idea of, and I've shared this before, it's, I know how to use Excel. Doesn't everybody know how to use Excel?
no,
Like, yeah, no.
really,
It's those things that we find like the simplest thing to do, but other people are just like, oh, I have no idea. You're talking another language right now. I have no idea what you're saying to me. Yeah.
yep. And a lot of times it can be, even one of my areas of natural genius is that I can see the natural genius in other people.
Mm.
So I often will say, oh, even just looking at Cleta as an example, right? I can see that's her natural genius, but I don't think other people have said that to her throughout her life. So
Mm.
often you need someone from the outside to look at you and say, this is what I see in you. This is what you're really good at. This is this is something that you bring to the world that is so valuable to people. And so that is an area of natural genius that I didn't know was valuable. I thought everyone could do that. And then I'm also really good at bringing those people into my world and letting them help me in their areas of natural genius. I have a huge team of people around me doing the things that they're great at for me. I have no need to do them myself, and letting them use their natural genius to help grow businesses, help support my family, help make our community a better place also.
Yeah. Yeah. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for diving into that a little bit more. And then another thing that I want to touch on is you discuss this idea of boundaries, and we've been hearing a lot about boundaries in a lot of areas, but you talk about boundaries with goals and how you can have this boundaries between ideas and yourself.
Yes.
And I want to talk about, so please share with us what this means exactly.
Yes. I'll tell you a story from the book that isn't actually a true story. I kind of created it, but things like this happen in meeting rooms all of the time. My husband is an assistant principal. This part of the story is true. He cannot stand the way the bus lanes work at our high school. He is one, it's not safe, it's not efficient. He's really bothered, and he's kind of a systems guy. This would be an example of having a boundary between your idea and your sense of self, your self-worth, or your self-esteem. So let's say Ryan has this idea of a different way to configure the bus lanes, and he heads into the admin meeting, and he's a big guy. Let's say he climbs up on the board table with all of his 6'5" stuff, and he has the idea. He's clinging to it like it's close to his chest, like it is a part of him. So he presents the idea, and he's sitting on this table, and people at the meeting start to say, well, but then the traffic will be backed up. And what about this issue? And I'm not sure I like that. And then another person isn't even paying attention. They have their arms crossed and they're rolling their eyes. If his idea is a part of him, every one of those critiques feels like a critique of him. And those of us with very busy minds are more at risk of this. This is a habit of thinking I work with a lot on clients. The busier your mind is, the more obsessively you think, the more attached to your ideas you become, because you've been thinking about them for so long. So it's sort of like winding a rope around you and holding that idea, right? Okay, here's another option. Ryan comes into the meeting wearing a backpack, and he pulls the idea out of the backpack and he puts it on the table, but he stays in his chair. And he says, I have this idea, but here it is. This is not Ryan. This is just an idea. And people start poking at it. He might even take a few pokes if it's out there on the table and it's not him and you're just looking at it. That's a boundary. We don't talk about boundaries in that sense. We talk about them more with relationships with people, but that's a boundary of you having a relationship with an idea and knowing where you end and the idea begins, and being able to keep those things separate so that you can be clear and objective and accurate in your assessment, even of your own ideas, and you can receive feedback on them. The same can be true of your performance, right? People have such a hard time receiving feedback on their performance because they're so attached to it as a source of value. But the further you can get that performance away from you and out on the table, then two people can sit next to each other, completely disagreeing, poking at it. And it can be so fun and even productive where you are like shaping that thing together. That is a kind of a boundary that we just have such a desperate need for in our world right now, to be able to talk about ideas out there and have completely different ideas and allow space for both seemingly opposing ideas. Very important.
Yeah, Amy, you're absolutely right. I agree with that 100%. And this idea of it really isn't me. This idea is not me. It's not who I am. It's a thought. It's something that I kind of created, I came up with, but it is not me. And
Yep.
so, yes, we can put it here and we can talk about it. And I love the idea of everybody then starts to throw some other idea at it, and you twist it and you change it and you come up with something better
Yes.
most of the time.
Yes, but you can't do that if he's not. And if everyone knows he's sitting on the table, they're not saying anything.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
because
true.
they know he's going to be mad, or there's going to be a price to pay later, or especially if those people are your subordinates or you are
Mhm.
leading them, they're really going to be cautious about their feedback then if they know you're attached to the idea. But it can feel like that to us a lot of times, that kind of feedback. It happens at a cellular level. We are
Yeah.
so attached to our ideas. People with damaged self-esteem struggle with this the most. Their attachment to their performance and ideas are so tied together because of the unhealed pain. So that's a space that I work with a ton with clients, is just the separation of I am, period, and I do this thing over here, right? Or I have
Yeah.
this idea over here, but those are two completely separate things. But yes, very important.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Thank
Mhm.
you for explaining that in such a great way. Again, these stories that you're sharing, I think, give us an opportunity to really think about things differently. And we've got images in our mind that help us to think about things differently. Okay, I want to talk now about boundary spectrum.
Oh,
And
yeah.
where did this idea come from?
Yes. This book is such a co-creation of my clients and me working together. I don't feel like I'm the one, and this is how the whole book is written also. I'm not the master coming in to impart my great wisdom upon you. I'm like a fellow explorer, and we are on this journey. And so when I think about this book and what it has taught me, but this is something I observed a ton with women who are very successful, where they were maybe what you would call like a beast in the boardroom,
Mhm.
guarded, in charge, making decisions. No one really knows me, very little emotion, even critical, very cold, just I'm going to get things done and I'm going to plow through whatever gets in my way, sort of a feeling. A lot of those clients that I work with that present that way in a professional setting would go home and be a total doormat in the
Mhm.
relationships in their lives, whether that be with a partner or their children or extended family. Very few boundaries or lackluster boundaries, a feeling of powerlessness. So what I realized is that the experience, so if you can imagine a spectrum, on one end, it would be walls, thick walls, high walls, protecting me from any kind of vulnerability. On the other end of the spectrum would be no boundaries or missing boundaries. If you could imagine that line drawing together the tips where you end up with a circle, the experience of those two things being very walled up and then having no boundaries are very similar. Isolation, resentment, frustration, exhaustion, feeling unseen. I started to think, oh, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I think the actual source of it is the same thing. We're just dealing with it in two different ways, or even the same person is dealing with it in two different ways, in two different parts of their life. And so the work of that is figuring out where to let the walls down and how far to let people in. And then where do the boundaries need to come up so that I feel safe and protected. And I know that I can enter into a relationship where I can be clear and accurate with people. And that work is really, again, it's a gradual, slow process. But it's something that is learnable. That's the good news. It's not hopeless. And I have seen transformation happen as women start to learn, oh, I have a voice here and I can be less, oh, what's a good word? Harsh, less guarded over here.
Oh gosh, Amy, that's excellent. Excellent stuff. I love it. And you're so right. I think the idea of they're really the same thing, just like appearing different, but it's truly coming from the same place. And it's such an interesting concept. So thank you for sharing that with
And,
us.
and let me add to the source of it a lot of times is our intuition. We have overridden our intuition for so long, many times out of survival. So if growing up things were happening and you were having to say, that's not right, but I have to make it okay over and over again, you lose touch with that part of you that says, this isn't right. This isn't, you can't access it because you've overridden it so many times. So let me show you where this shows up too. It shows up in our decisions about how much is an appropriate amount to work. We don't even know. We're just trying to decide is 8 hours and 10 hours. We don't have the intuition that says, I'm tired. I'm done. Or I've done enough for the day, because we have overridden that for so many years. We can't even access that whisper inside of us. Or around food, for example, I'm full, that my body is full, I've eaten enough. So every choice about food becomes a mental decision. And when our brains are tired at the end of the day, we don't make great decisions with our minds. We can't trust our bodies to say, I'm full, that was good enough, or I'm hungry, I'm going to stop. Or even simple things like, I'm too tired to exercise today, or I need to move my body today. Whatever those things are, everything is being driven by external expectations, models of what we should be, how much we should be doing, instead of an internal guidance system that would guide us absolutely in a beautiful way toward a healthier path. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Again, it's brilliant what you're sharing with us right now. I think on some level, we could be like, this, yeah, this is kind of common sense, but we have just completely ignored it for so long, or we've got so much work to do, and there's just more work that keeps coming in. And you realize, like, tomorrow I'm going to be even more underwater if I don't keep working to get these things done now. And you just ignore what your body is saying, and it happens all the time.
We're trained to do it.
Yeah.
Push through, scrappy, fight through to we're trained and we are encouraged and cheered on for doing it. And I'll tell you, being on the receiving end of someone who's boundaried is kind of frustrating. I have this friend who helps me with technology. It's his business. He can set up like a 30-minute call when something goes wrong with your computer. And last night we ran into this glitch with my daughter's computer that I could not figure out. And I texted him. I said, "Is there any chance you're free right now to help us with this issue? It's 6:30 in the evening." And he said, "No, I'm making dinner," which he's worked with me. I was like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Really great boundary."
Yeah.
But it's frustrating, but I also said, "Way to go." 'Cause to me, it would be hard for him to say no to me, especially because I could kind of pull the friend card a little bit more. But I honored his saying, "I can't right now. I'm having dinner with my family," where he wouldn't have done that before. But I will say, I was wanting him to break the boundary. And I
Yeah.
teach boundaries. So I do understand that it is something that it's a continuous practice. You're ramming up against it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent example again. I think that we've all been in that position where it was like we want to hold our boundaries and be like, no, I'm done for the day. I'm taking my time now. I need my time. I need my space. But then when we need something, it's kind of like, well, could you just help me? Yeah. I think you're not alone in that. Yeah. There's another point in the book that I really want to talk about because this just was like, okay, I have to know more about this. What
Mm,
does she mean by this? And it's we allow money to make us feel unsafe.
mhm.
And I want to know what your concept of getting on the beach with your money means.
My
So
gosh.
tell us about it.
I know. Of all of the personal growth I've done, my relationship with money is the area of my life I'm the most proud of. And it is the place that I have and continue to invest the most time and energy with, only because money has so much to teach us. So, as an entrepreneur, particularly, or someone who earns a variable income based on their performance. So, sometimes that's people working in sales where they are commission based, or if you own your own business of any kind, your income changes. It goes up and down seasonally, or just based on your efforts, or based on the economy and what's happening in the world. So, before, my experience with money was that I was in the ocean, maybe on a surfboard, but every wave, when I was at the top, I was like, you know, and then when it crashed, I was underwater, gasping, trying to breathe. And I think anyone who has owned their own business can feel that. I think you've experienced it if you have taken the more treacherous path of entrepreneurship. What I've learned is that the healthier way for me to operate my business, but also to engage with money and to have a relationship with it, is to swim to shore, get out of the water, go to the store and buy one of those cute little chairs and a beach umbrella and set up shop and watch what's happening from a distance.
Mhm.
I was the one who chose to be in the water and be so happy when it was high and be so not happy when it was low. From the beach, what you can see with your money is that one, it should go in and out. Movement is the point. There should be waves. That is the experience of running a business. There are also storms. We had a global pandemic. That was a hurricane. It was a legit hurricane, maybe even a tsunami for certain kinds of businesses, right?
Yeah.
It left its mark and it will continue to. That is something that happens when you're dealing with water and the ocean. The other things that you can see, though, are that there's no shortage. No one's worried that there's not enough water in the ocean. And no one is worried when the tide goes out that the tide won't come back in. Now, you may sometimes have to move to a different beach. Maybe your beach gets washed away. There are things that happen where you've got to adjust. But what I know is that money moves toward me more quickly when I'm on the beach and I'm not in the water, because when I'm in the water, it's affecting my every interaction with the people that I'm supposed to serve through my business.
Mm.
And when I'm unattached emotionally to it and just observing it coming and going and coming and going, the way that I show up for people is very consistent and very others focused. And it doesn't pull me away from the very tiny millimeter steps that grow my business every day because I'm in a panic about it. So I think it's this lifelong learning for me of that in my mind, swimming to the shore and getting on the beach so that I have a perspective from a distance instead of being in it so intimately, that allows me to make better long-term strategic decisions. It gives me a better quality of life. I'm better at the work I do for my clients. And it's actually just a healthier relationship to have with anything, but particularly with money.
Stuff.
That, can you feel
I
that?
absolutely
I was with
100%. Yeah, I'm with you. I can totally. And again, the imagery that you're
Mm,
sharing really puts it at a different level. Like you really can see
mm,
how putting that space between what is happening in yourself and not being like you're riding that
mm,
wave where you're up and down and then your emotions are up and down
uh,
and all of that. 100% can relate to that. Having owned my own business, being an entrepreneur, I totally can feel that.
yes.
So yeah, great stuff.
Mhm.
And Amy, your book is just tremendous. And there's so many more points I wanted to discuss, but
Mm,
I before we close out, I want to have you share. Do you have the book with you? Do you want to show the viewers
yes,
on
I
YouTube?
would love to. I have this book
Please.
always here with
Yes.
me. There she is. I'm so
Yes.
proud of it. There were lots of choices about the title that I really advocated for that were important to me. And one of my really good friends is a photographer who took the picture. So I'm just super proud of what we created with the publishing company. They really partnered with my vision for it, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely. So your book again is I See You, and it's the guide for women to make more, have more, and be more without more work. Great stuff. So tell the listeners where they can find it.
I would love to. Anywhere you can purchase books. So online at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org, all of those great places. You also can download it on Audible. It's my voice. So I recorded it. A lot of people love that. It's my voice and they love to put it in their AirPods. I do have quite a few readers who have told me they got the Audible and the book because they first listened and then they thought, oh, I really need to do some of the exercises in it. It's designed to feel like a coaching experience with me feels. So there's a feeling to the book. There's a unique experience with it. And I would just invite you to open the door and come in and see if you like the way it feels, because I think when we feel seen, we start to show up differently in the world. I think it's
Mm.
really important.
Yeah, I love
Mhm.
that. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And I'll include, of course, all the information in the show notes. And is there any other books that you'd like to share with us that have been helpful for you, beneficial, that you think would be good for the listeners to know?
Oh my gosh. I love books to the nth degree. Probably there is one book I recommend more than any other book to people, and this has been for the last 25 years. And that is a book called The Secrets of Six-Figure Women. It's
Mm.
written by Barbara Stanley. It sounds a little like gimmicky, and it is not. So she is a journalist who is assigned the task of interviewing women who earn six figures. And she went into it with all of these expectations about what these women would be like. And her discovery through these conversations leads to complete transformation of her life and to the realization of a lot of the internal messaging she had around money and really reframing all of that. It changed my life so profoundly and allowed me to step in a space of earning that level of income. And without that book, I know I never would have. So I always recommend that book. She is the endorsement on the cover of my book, also. Barbara is. She's gotten to be a friend, which has been kind of really cool. So, yeah, Barbara, I was so honored that she wrote the endorsement.
Oh gosh, yes. Thank you for that recommendation, Amy. That sounds fantastic. And I will include that information as well. And is there any podcasts that you enjoy listening to that you'd like to share?
Oh my gosh. Okay. This one is sort of a unique, and this would only maybe be if a listener was interested in becoming a writer. But my writing coach just did a series podcast. It's sort of an evergreen. It's not with guests. It's her and her writing partner, Mike Michalowicz, who wrote Profit First. And it is delightful. They're talking about the publishing industry, about writing. It's called Don't Write That Book. But there's so much wisdom in it about business, about marketing, about relationships, about how our own internal journeys affect our work. And their dialogue, they're diametrically different, is delightful. They are so complementary to each other in their approaches, and they bring something different. So it's called Don't Write That Book. And I have just enjoyed it so sincerely that I recommend it to everyone because I think it's so great.
Fabulous. Thank you. Another great recommendation for
Mm.
sure. Thank you for that. And so, lastly, would you please share with us, Amy, where the listeners can find you if they want to
Yes.
follow your journey and know more about what the work that you're doing? How would they be able to find you?
Of course. amykemp.com. So amykemp.com is my website. And one of the things I would invite you to do on the website is to take the Habit Finder assessment. So this measures where your risks are in your subconscious habits of thinking right now, and it's free. You can just go onto my website and take it at any time, and you get your results right away. It gives you a 44-page PDF breakdown of the results. So that's one invitation. And then I also would invite you to follow me on social media, most actively on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On Facebook and Instagram, it's Amy Kemp Inc. So you can find me there pretty easily. And then LinkedIn, also just my name. So I would love to invite you into that community. I think it's a fun way to connect with people and to continue to co-create together.
For sure. I'll include all that information in the show notes. Amy, thank you again for coming on the show. This has just been amazing. I've so enjoyed this conversation and all of the great nuggets of wisdom that you've shared with us. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk more soon.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.